Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, everyone. So we're here in Russell Square. Very beautiful place. Srila Prabhupada used to come and walk here. Devotees used to go on morning walks from Bury Place. So we're just around the corner from here, so it's very easy for us to come. So we're going to continue our reading today of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And so we'll start with the invocation. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatiyam Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayat Nasta Praishwa Badreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki. So reading from Srimad Bhagavatam,
Canto 1, Chapter 2, verses 28 and 29. In the revealed scriptures, the ultimate personality of Godhead is Sri Krishna. The ultimate object of knowledge is Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. The purpose of performing sacrifices to please Him. Yoga is for realizing Him. All fruitive activities are ultimately rewarded by Him only. He is the supreme knowledge, and all severe austerities are performed to know Him. Religion, Dharma, is rendering loving service unto Him. He is the supreme goal of life. Purport. That Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, is the only object of worship is confirmed in these two slokas. In the Vedic literature, there is the same objective, establishing one's relationship and ultimately reviving our lost loving service unto Him. That is the sum and substance of the Vedas. In the Bhagavad Gita, the same theory is confirmed by the Lord in His own words. The ultimate purpose of the Vedas is to know Him only. All the revealed scriptures are prepared by the Lord through His incarnation in the body of Srila Vyasadeva, just to remind the fallen souls, conditioned by material nature, of Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead. No demigod can award freedom from material bondage. That is the verdict of all the revealed scriptures. Impersonalists who have no information of the personality of Godhead minimize the omnipotency of the Supreme Lord and put Him on equal footing with all other living beings. And for this act, such impersonalists get freedom from material bondage only with great difficulty. They can surrender under Him only after many, many births in the culture of transcendental knowledge.
Can you check to see if you can find it? I can't see it, I just wanted to hear it, see the volume. One may argue, excuse me, I found it. Did you? Okay. One may argue that the Vedic activities are based on sacrificial ceremonies. That is true, but all such sacrifices are also meant for realizing the truth about Vasudeva. Another name of Vasudeva is Yajna, sacrifice. And in the Bhagavad Gita it is clearly stated that all sacrifices and all activities are to be conducted for the satisfaction of Yajna, or Vishnu, the personality of Godhead. This is the case also with the yoga systems. Yoga means to get in touch with the Supreme Lord. The process, however, includes several bodily features such as asana, dhyana, pranayama, and meditation. And all of them are meant for concentrating upon the localized aspect of Vasudeva, represented as Paramatma. Paramatma realization is but partial realization of Vasudeva, and if one is successful in that attempt, one realizes Vasudeva in full. But by ill luck, most yogis are stranded by the powers of mysticism achieved through the bodily process. Ill-fated yogis are given a chance in the next birth by being placed in the families of good learned Brahmins, or in the families of rich merchants, in order to execute the unfinished task of Vasudeva realization. If such fortunate brahmanas and sons of rich men properly utilize the chance, they can easily realize Vasudeva by good association with saintly persons. Unfortunately, such preferred persons are captivated again by material wealth and honor, and thus they practically forget the aim of life.
This is also so for the culture of knowledge. According to Bhagavad Gita, there are 18 items in culturing knowledge. By such culture of knowledge, one becomes gradually prideless, devoid of vanity, non-violent, forbearing, simple, devoted to the great spiritual master and self-controlled. By culture of knowledge, one becomes unattached to earth and home and becomes conscious of the miseries due to death, birth, old age and disease. And all culture of knowledge culminates in devotional service to the personality of Godhead Vasudeva. Therefore, Vasudeva is the ultimate aim in culturing all different branches of knowledge. Culture of knowledge, leading one to the transcendental plane of meeting Vasudeva, is real knowledge. Physical knowledge in its various branches is condemned in the Bhagavad Gita as Ajnana, or the opposite of real knowledge. The ultimate aim of physical knowledge is to satisfy the senses, which means prolongation of the term of material existence and thereby continuance of the free flow of miseries. So prolonging the miserable life of material existence is necessary, but the same physical knowledge leading to the way of spiritual understanding helps one to end the miserable life of physical existence and to begin the life of spiritual existence on the plane of Vasudeva.
The same applies to all kinds of austerities. Tapasya means voluntary acceptance of bodily pains to achieve some higher end of life. Ravan and Hiranyakashipu underwent a severe type of bodily tapasya, bodily torture, to achieve the end of sense gratification. Sometimes modern politicians also undergo severe types of austerities to achieve some political end. This is not actually tapasya. One should accept voluntary bodily inconvenience for the sake of knowing Vasudeva, because that is the way of real austerities. Otherwise, all forms of austerities are classified as mode of passion and ignorance. Passion and ignorance cannot end the miseries of life. Only the mode of goodness can mitigate the threefold miseries of life. Vasudeva and Devaki, the so-called father and mother of Lord Krishna, underwent penances to get Vasudeva as their son. Lord Sri Krishna is the father of all living beings. Bhagavad Gita 14:14. Therefore, he is the original living being of all other living beings. He is the original eternal enjoyer amongst all other enjoyers. Therefore, no one can be his begetting father, as the ignorant may think. Lord Sri Krishna agreed to become the son of Vasudeva and Devaki upon being pleased with their severe austerities. Therefore, if any austerities have to be done, they must be done to achieve the end of knowledge, Vasudeva.
Vasudeva is the original personality of Godhead, Lord Sri Krishna. As explained before, the original personality of Godhead expands himself by innumerable forms. Such expansion of forms is made possible by his various energies. His energies are also multifarious, and his internal energies are superior, and external energies inferior quality. They are explained in the Bhagavad Gita 7.46 as the para and the apara properties. So his expansions of various forms which take place via the internal energies are superior forms, whereas the expansions which take place via the external energies are inferior forms. The living entities are also his expansions. The living entities who are expanded by his internal potency are eternally liberated persons, whereas those who are expanded in terms of the material energies are eternally conditioned souls. Therefore, all culture of knowledge, austerities, sacrifice, activities should be aimed at changing the quality of the influence that is acting upon us. For the present, we are all being controlled by the external energy of the Lord, and just to change the quality of the influence, we must endeavor to cultivate spiritual energy. In the Bhagavad Gita, it is said that those who are Mahatmas, or those whose minds have been so broadened as to be engaged in the service of Lord Krishna, under the influence of the internal potency. And the effect is that such broad-minded living beings are constantly engaged in the service of the Lord without deviation. That should be the aim of life, and that is the verdict of all the Vedic literatures. No one should bother himself with fruitive activities or dry speculation about transcendental knowledge. Everyone should at once engage himself in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. Nor should one worship different demigods who work as different hands of the Lord for creations, maintenance or destruction of the material world. There are innumerable powerful demigods who look over the external management of the material world. They are all different assisting hands of Lord Vasudeva. Even Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma are included in the list of demigods, but Lord Vishnu or Vasudeva is always transcendentally situated. Even though he accepts the quality of goodness of the material world, he is still transcendental to all the material modes. The following example will clear that matter more explicitly. In the prison house, there are the prisoners and the managers of the prison house. Both the managers and the prisoners are bound by the laws of the king. But even though the king sometimes comes in the prison, he is not bound by the laws of the prison house. The king is therefore always transcendental to the laws of the prison house, as the Lord is always transcendental to the laws of the material world.
You need to read a little bit louder. In the beginning of the material creation, that absolute personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, in his transcendental position, created the energies of cause and effect by his own internal energy. So this is Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 2, this is verse 30. The position of the Lord is always transcendental because the causal and effectual energies required for the creation of the material world were also created by him. He is unaffected. Therefore, by the qualities of the material modes, his existence, form, activities, and paraphernalia all existed before the material creation. He is all spiritual and has nothing to do with the qualities of the material world, which are qualitatively distinct from the spiritual qualities of the Lord.
Text 31. After creating the material substance, the Lord Vasudeva expands himself and enters into it. And although he is within the material modes of nature and appears to be one of the created beings, he is always fully enlightened in his transcendental position. Purport. The living entities are separated parts and parcels of the Lord, and the conditioned living entities who are unfit for the spiritual kingdom are strewn within the material world to enjoy matter to the fullest extent. As Paramatma, an eternal friend of the living entities, the Lord, by one of his plenary portions, accompanies the living entities to guide them in their material enjoyment and to become witness to all activities. While the living entities enjoy the material conditions, the Lord maintains his transcendental position without being affected by the material atmosphere. In the Vedic literature, Shruti, it is said that there are two birds in one tree. One of them is eating the fruit of the tree, while the other is witnessing the actions. The witness is the Lord, and the fruit eater is the living entity. The fruit eater, the living entity, has forgotten his real identity and is overwhelmed in the fruitive activities of the material conditions. But the Lord, Paramatma, is always full in transcendental knowledge. That is the difference between the super soul and the conditioned soul. The conditioned soul, the living entity, is controlled by the laws of nature, while the Paramatma, or the super soul, is the controller of the material energy.
Canto 1, Chapter 2, verse 32. The Lord, as Supersoul, pervades all things, just as fire permeates wood, and so he appears to be of many varieties, though he is the absolute one without a second. Lord Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by one of his plenary parts expands himself all over the material world, and his existence can be perceived even within the atomic energy. matter, antimatter, proton, neutron, etc., are all different effects of the Paramatma's feature of the Lord. As from wood, fire can be manifested, or as butter can be churned out of milk, so also the presence of the Lord as Paramatma can be felt by the process of legitimate hearing and chanting of the transcendental subjects, which are especially treated in the Vedic literatures like the Upanishads and Vedanta. Srimad Bhagavatam is the bona fide explanation of these Vedic literatures. The Lord can be realized through the oral reception of the transcendental message, and that is the only way to experience the transcendental subject. As fire is kindled from wood by another fire, the divine consciousness of man can similarly be kindled by another divine grace. His Divine Grace, the spiritual master, can kindle the spiritual fire from the wood-like living entity by imparting proper spiritual messages injected through the receptive ear. Therefore, one is required to approach the proper spiritual master with receptive ears only, and thus divine existence is gradually realized. The difference between animality and humanity, and humanity lies in this process only. The human being can hear properly, whereas an animal cannot.
Text 33. The supersoul enters into the bodies of the created beings who are influenced by the modes of material nature and causes them to enjoy the effects of those modes by the subtle mind. Purport. There are 8,400,000 species of living beings, beginning from the highest intellectual being Brahma down to the insignificant ant, and all of them are enjoying the material world according to the desires of the subtle mind and gross material body. The gross material body is based on the conditions of the subtle mind, and the senses are created according to the desire of the living being. The Lord, as Paramatma, helps the living being to get material happiness because the living being is helpless in all respects in obtaining what he desires. He proposes and the Lord disposes. In another sense, the living beings are parts and parcels of the Lord. They are therefore one with the Lord. In the Bhagavad Gita, the living beings in all varieties of bodies have been claimed by the Lord as his sons. The sufferings and enjoyments of the sons are indirectly the sufferings and enjoyments of the Father. Still, the Father is not in any way directly affected by the suffering and enjoyment of the sons. He is so kind that he constantly remains with the living being as Paramatma and always tries to convert the living being towards the real happiness.
Canto 1, Chapter 2, Verse 34. Thus the Lord of the universes maintains all planets, inhabited by demigods, men, and lower animals. Assuming the roles of incarnations, he performs pastimes to reclaim those in the mode of pure goodness. There are innumerable material universes, and in each and every universe there are innumerable planets inhabited by different grades of living entities in different modes of nature. The Lord, Vishnu, incarnates himself in each and every one of them and in each and every type of living society. Amazing. He manifests his transcendental pastimes amongst them just to create the desire to go back to Godhead. The Lord does not change his original transcendental position, but he appears to be differently manifested according to the particular time, circumstances, and society.
Sometimes he incarnates himself or empowers a suitable living being to act for him, but in either case the purpose is the same. The Lord wants the suffering living being to go back home, back to Godhead. The happiness which the living beings are hankering for is not to be found within any corner of the innumerable universes and material planets. The eternal happiness which the living being wants is obtainable in the kingdom of God, but the forgetful living beings under the influence of the material modes have no information of the kingdom of God. The Lord therefore comes to propagate the message of the kingdom of God, either personally as an incarnation or through his bona fide representative as the good Son of God. Such incarnations or sons of God are not making propaganda for going back to Godhead, only within the human society. Their work is also going on in all types of societies amongst demigods and those other than human beings.
Keep reading. Was that the end of the chapter?
Yeah.
Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purports of the first canto, second chapter of Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Divinity and Divine Service. Is that the time as well?
Yeah.
More or less? Okay. So we finished chapter 2, and we'll live to read another, Krishna willing. So nice to be with all of you. Thank you for tuning in. Hare Krishna, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki.
Jai.
Haribol.